The Watts riots of 1965 lay destruction in its wake. Fast forward to the early 90s, and the urban youth are still trying to find their way. Broken homes, gang violence, and the drug game dot the hood. Caine finds himself embroiled in the turmoil, having grown up with little means and as the child of a dealer and an addict. Will Caine break the cycle or remain a menace to himself and a menace to society? Welcome to Hip Hop Movie Club. This is a show for Gen X hip hop fans who want to relive the glory days and reconsider classic and modern hip hop films from a current day perspective. Together, we'll explore some of the largest societal issues raised in these films. Whether you have or have not seen Menace II Society before, we'll have you decide if you should take the time to watch it now. Either way, you'll be a smarter hip hop fan by the end of this episode. In the next 30 minutes or so, you'll get all this and more. We are three old heads who put their old heads together to vibe on these films for you. I'm DynoWright, podcaster, filmmaker, longtime hip-hop fan, and the first hip-hop act I ever saw live was Arrested Development at Lollapalooza in 1993.
I'm JB, 80s and 90s nostalgia junkie, longtime hip-hop fan, and I recently saw the hip-hop duo Ray Shrummer perform at Hofstra University's Fall Fest.
I'm BooGie, a DJ, longtime hip-hop fan, and in addition to my wax, also have a pretty nice cassette collection, complete with a working AOA Walkman and a Sanyo boombox.
In this episode, we'll answer the question, does Menace II Society still resonate today?
Menace II Society is a crime drama depicting the formative years of Caine Lawson growing up around drugs and violent crime. Caine narrates his own story, navigating through the projects and living the thug life. We can only hope that he can reform his ways and find a safe exit strategy. This movie was from 1993. So let's get into Menace II Society. We'll dig right in. I think let's start at the top. So take us through the now famous and often parodied opening scene that takes place in a convenience store. But you want to lay the foundation of what happens there?
Yeah, sure, I could do that. So the opening scene of the movie shows Caine and Old Dog walking into the local convenience store, talking about meeting up later and some things that they're about to get into. There's an Asian woman cleaning in the store, and Old Dog immediately responds to her like she doesn't have to follow them around. So they grab their 40 ounces, and as they're about to open it, the male cashier tells them that they can't drink their beer in the store. And Old Dog's like, yeah, we're gonna pay for it, whatever. So then the lady responds, hurry up and buy, which is one of the famous lines that's parodied in Don't Be a Menace to South Central by drinking juice in the hood. And also the scenario of her following around the store in various places and popping up, hiding out throughout the store. So then the cashier tells them they have to pay and leave them, that they should just hurry up and go. And the lady just kind of watching them, following them around or whatever. So Caine tells Old Dog to get his change, and he starts walking towards the door with his 40 ounce in his hand. And then Old Dog says, hey, what's up with my man's change? To which the cashier gives him his change and then says, I feel sorry for your mother. Another line that's popped up in Don't Be a Menace to South Central, drinking juice in the hood, to which Old Dog responds, what you say about my mama. Famous line, also parodied in that movie. But he immediately walks over to the cashier in a rage, and the cinematography just kind of pans over. You see Caine with his 40 ounce in his hand, and then we just hear gunshots ringing off. 40 ounce hits the floor, and then we look over and we see Old Dog just kind of shooting the man behind the register. He grabs the woman who's there as a witness now and takes her to the back to go grab the security tape. And he's telling her to hurry up and eject it. And then you hear him shoot her as well, which is very unfortunate. Then Caine runs out. Old Dog runs out and is telling Caine that, hurry up. I thought you were going to open up the register. And as Old Dog runs through the register, he only finds $6. So it's like, wow. But then he immediately starts to pat down the victim, the man who's laying there, and take the rest of the money that he found on him. He hops over the counter, and before he leaves, he grabs his 40 ounce and they run out. So it's just like, wow. Like the way it escalated in a matter of seconds is just unreal. It's jarring if you've never seen that scene before. And I've seen it several times, and it still jars me a bit because of how quickly it escalated and the temperament that Old Dog displays in that situation. But like I said, it's been parodied a few times, and the parodies are much funnier and they bring a lot more light to it. But yeah, that lays it out right there.
Yeah, good breakdown. And I think it's important for a historical perspective because I was reading more up on the tensions in the Watts area, and the store owners are Korean, and there was palpable tension between the two communities, the Korean community, the black community. There was a famous killing of Latasha Harlan in 1991 at the hands of a Korean convenience store owner. And then there was other incidents after the Rodney King riots in Koreatown section in 92. So the Hughes brothers, played off of that with this scene. So palpable tension, art imitating life, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yep.
This scene sets up the rest of the movie, and it doesn't escalate until the Korean store owner says, "I feel sorry for your mother," bringing into focus like the real problem here. This movie spotlights is that the O-Dog and Caine don't really have parents, and the support system, and we'll talk about this, is not really there for them. And this is their way of dealing with it, is to shoot the two store owners.
Yeah.
So it's horrible, but this is the situation they find themselves in.
Yeah. Like you said, Boogie, the scene is jarring. It shocked and captivated audiences. Remember, this is 1993. Not much of this raw violence was documented before, even in a fictional story. But again, life imitates art. So this had happened. Similar incidents had occurred. What's crazy in researching it too is that the Hughes brothers, Alan and Albert Hughes, were just 20 years old when they made the film, and their goal was to shock and educate white America, through shock value. So it sure did the job there.
And it's 2 years after Boys in the Hood still.
Yeah, right. We're going to talk about compare and contrast to Boys in the Hood. So right, it's 2 years after that. But wow, that opening scene, it is a very legendary scene in crime dramas.
Yeah.
And I read that Lorenz Tate ad-libbed "What You Say About My Mama," which is amazing.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that whole the security tape that Old Dog eventually does grab out of the back with the woman, that tape is constantly coming up throughout the movie in various scenarios, because it becomes a mockery to watch that scene. Well, the guys sit around with their drinks and smoking or whatever, to watch that as a parody of what happened, like laughing at it, and it's crazy.
Yeah, he was proud. He was celebrating it, boasting about what he had done, because he had that street cred. It's
this
crazy.
is a Sports Center top 10 highlight film.
So it's funny. We have younger listeners out here that may not understand this concept, because nowadays everybody has cell phones. This would have been one of them would have been filming it on a cell phone, recording it, and then they'd be sharing it through social media, hopefully not letting it get out to the authorities somehow, trusting the people. But back in the day, it was a physical tape that was in the surveillance camera sitting in the convenience store that they had to eject, and a physical tape that was important that he wanted to make sure he possessed so that the authorities wouldn't get it. But again, he ended up replaying it for other people and celebrating, which was savage for sure. So Caine, the main character, Caine, the protagonist, as you mentioned, DynoWright, born into a life of crime, addict and dealer for parents who both died young because of the world in which they lived and circumstances. Do you empathize with Caine? Like, are you rooting for him throughout the movie? Why or why not? DynoWright, you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure. I was rooting for him because he had a rough upbringing. And generally, he wasn't looking for trouble in the beginning, but then the life just took over him. But he's not so much pulled into it as that he chooses to live that life. And so I was rooting for him at first, but then I'm like, oh, this is not going to end well for him. And he turns into an anti-hero, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I guess the rooting, as much as you can root for him, you just root for him to survive the movie.
Yeah, you root for him to maybe reform himself, is what I was saying.
Yeah, he was trying. I guess even though he did embrace the lifestyle, he also, I think he came to the realization that he needed to get out. And so he was going to. And then we find out, we see what happens right before he leaves.
BooGie, what are your thoughts? Were you rooting for Caine?
Yeah, it's hard for me not to empathize with Caine to a certain extent. I mean, I understand that he is the product of his parents to an extent, and the product of his environment to an extent. I mean, but he also has a loving loving, nurturing grandparents, that want to see him become a good person. Like they, upright, religious folks, and they sat down. They would talk with him. They would spend time with him. They would give him encouraging words. Repeatedly throughout the film, you see them, pushing for him to do the right thing, even pulling Old Dog in and talking with Old Dog as well. So, and I like to see the underdog succeed. Like, that because of his environment that he's in, he's the underdog, and he's on his way to becoming a statistic by his actions. But on the flip side, it's hard to root for him because he continues to participate in knucklehead behavior. Like the incident when his cousin was murdered in a carjacking. They knew who the people were. They had a perfect opportunity to get the authorities involved in that situation, but no, they went and handled it themselves. Even when he met the girl Lena, and she called him and told him that she was pregnant. His immediate reaction was to almost abandon her in that situation and claim that it wasn't even his child. When he had the Mustang 5.0, yeah, he had factory rims on it. But what did he do? He went out and robbed the guy for his Dayton's to put him on his car. And then even when Lena's cousin came over to confront him about, dissing Lena, I mean, yeah, okay, a fight is a fight, but the extent to which he beat him was brutal. Like, he's stomping repeatedly on his head while he's on the ground. Things like that. It kind of makes it hard for you to want to root for him, but like DynoWright said, like you're rooting for him to survive the movie because the path that he's going down, something's going to happen. But then there was like the light side of it when Ronnie and even what's his name, Sharif and Stacy were trying to get him to go to Kansas, and then Ronnie's like, why don't you come to Atlanta with us? And he finally was like, all right, looks like he was going to go. But, as the cliche saying goes, life comes at you fast. And it sure did, right when he was ready to make a move.
Yeah, great breakdown. I was rooting for him to turn his life around. Again, I grimaced at all the brutality that he put out there in the world. Carjacking, retaliation, murder, rough. But he did have a soft spot for Purnell, who was his mentor, and Ronnie's son,
Mm-hmm.
while Purnell was in prison. Like the little boy Anthony, I think he either bought him a big wheel or said he was going to, and he would continuously give money to Ronnie to help care for Anthony because Purnell was locked up. So he did have a loving side, but it was just shrouded by all the hardness from his upbringing and his surroundings. So we didn't mention his father was played by Samuel L. Jackson, and the character Ronnie was Jada Pinkett Smith. There's some big names in here.
Yeah.
For sure. So let's talk a little bit more about Caine's support system. What comprised Caine's support system? Who were the influences for him? BooGie, you want to take that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think touched on it a little bit. But he did have, like I said, he had his grandparents. I mean, that was his primary support. I mean, he lived with them, and they fed him and provided for him up until he got to the point where he started hustling and kind of somewhat doing for himself. But they were there for him, and I mean, they tried to as best they could. I mean, granted, it would have probably been a little different had they been younger, and probably able to go outside and kind of chase him around or whatever. But they were definitely there for him. You did mention Ronnie. She was very supportive of him as well, and she cared very deeply for him. You can see it from the beginning that there was a connection between the two of them, and she was looking out for him and wanted him to do good. And she was the one that was trying to encourage him to leave and come with her to just get away and just start over. Even his boys Sharif and Stacy, like I said, they mentioned earlier, they were trying to get him to move to Kansas with them because they knew there was nothing going on in South Central L.A. either. So they were like, we got to get out of here, and you should come with us. And even to the point where Sharif's father, Mr. Butler, stepped in and was trying to talk to them, and that was he was a great role model. And as he said, there was a statement he mentioned in regards to Sharif, and he said, referring to the Nation of Islam, being able to give Sharif that support that, to make him a better person. He said, listen, I don't care, if he's Muslim or not. Like, if he's making my son, a better person, I'm all for it. And he was just like, I don't understand it. I'm not Muslim, but hey, it's helping my son. It's good. So stuff like that, But he, like I said, I think those were probably the primary positive influences in his life.
Yeah, I saw one powerful speech, Mr. Butler, Sharif's dad, very slowly stated, being a black man in America is tough. You are the prey. Just survive. Like, he tried to drill that into Caine, but he just wouldn't listen. He was too embroiled in his lifestyle. It was hard to get out. But yeah, he had those other opportunities. His grandparents were very proud of him that he was getting his diploma, and they were religious, and but you could tell that Caine was uncomfortable when they started talking about God. He's like, oh, they're talking about that God stuff, and but he was brushing it off, unfortunately. And Ronnie wanted him to avoid the fate of Purnell, like in jail or worse, So they're pulling for him and trying to pull, but their force wasn't as strong as the other influences of the negative influences. O-Dog was totally unhinged. Like you said, he was showing off the video and not a good influence at all.
And like I get Caine's cynicism to an extent. I mean, having witnessed what he witnessed as a child with his parents, father selling drugs and shooting somebody and killing him right in the house, his mother being strung out on heroin and crack or whatever. So I mean, I get the cynicism. Like say, when the grandparents want to talk about guys, say, okay, well, what happened with my parents? I kind of get where he's coming from to a certain extent, but at the same time, you can't go through life, focusing on the negative when you have all these, people around that are trying to pull for you. So, I mean, like I said, that's what made it kind of hard. When I said it earlier, it's like made it hard for me to kind of empathize when he's got these people that are trying to root for him,
Yeah. DynoWright, anything to add on the influences on Caine?
It takes a village, and if the village doesn't have stable parents in the beginning, it's really tough to make it. And despite the best efforts of the grandparents, Harold for a few minutes before he got shot in the carjacking, and Sharif and Stacy and Ronnie and Purnell, there's only so much they can do. And Caine made his decisions despite what people were trying to help him were doing. So it's tough.
What were the opportunities that he had to escape his life of crime? But you talked about it. His friend Stacy and Sharif were moving to Kansas, and he wanted to come along. And what were some of the other opportunities he had to escape? You want to touch on that?
I mean, even just the fact that, it was unfortunate that his cousin Harold was killed, but he was shot and he survived. You live through something like that. That's a point where you could say, well, maybe I need to kind of start rethinking some things.
Yeah.
But he didn't rethink things at all. Like the immediate response was to retaliate. And I get it. That's your cousin. I get it. But at the same time, you can't expect to go out and do something like that and something good come about it. Because, yeah, okay, you kill these guys. Now what next? Like, you could have gotten caught in the process by the police and shot and killed right there on the spot. Their friends could have came and saw it, and they could have shot and killed you on the spot. There's so many things that could have gone wrong by jumping to those actions. And he had a perfect opportunity to completely avoid all of that, and he chose not to. Even like I said before, with his grandfather trying to talk to him and Old Dog about the trouble they get into, because he sees it. Like some of it he sees, some of it he hears, through hearsay through the neighborhood. But he's calling it to their attention that I know what you guys. I don't even know all of it, but I know what you guys are doing out there is wrong. And you kind of might want to try to correct it. And they didn't, even when they tried to, they went to go steal a car, and he got his sentence got reduced to attempted joyriding instead of grand theft auto. Okay, you got a reduction, and then his fingerprints matched the 40 ounce that was dropped in the store. He got interrogated and got away with it. They couldn't find anything because they had no evidence. So he got off of that. There's another opportunity. Okay, I got away. You know what? I'm clean. I'm out. I'm done. Nope. Keep going. Sharif and Stacy trying to talk to him. Nope. In one ear and out the other. Mr. Butler talking to him. In one ear, out the other. And then they had the unfortunate scene where Caine and Sharif were brutally beaten by the police officers. And nope, and I think that might have been somewhat of a turning point, because Ronnie actually put it in his head to go with it to Atlanta, and then she asked him again, and he finally did accept. But after all of the laundry list of things that he's done, and granted, it's a movie, so they only show us certain aspects of what happened. So there's probably a lot more that he's done that didn't make the film.
Yeah.
Right. It's safe to make that assumption, and it all caught up to him,
When faced with the opportunity to really change, he never takes the opportunity.
Right.
He makes really bad decisions. On the face of it.
And I guess that's the stubbornness of being young and growing up in that environment, not having that true father figure or parental figure.
His moral compass is broken. He never really had one.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though he like you said, he did have a loving side to him, and distorted maybe, but loyalty. It's one of the great things about this movie. It's very morally complex.
Yeah. Right. That's why I found myself torn a little bit, rooting for him versus not rooting for him. It's like it's almost like dummy. Like Just get out of this. Like,
Fool.
you have an opening. You have an opening. Just like see the path, but there's something keeping him from that.
Yeah.
Like, even like, when he went to go see Purnell even knew. Purnell was like, listen, man, just go with them and look out for my son. Be there for my son and tell him that, show him that what we were doing was wrong. It was BS.
Right. Yeah.
Show him a better way. But I think that might have probably been the icing on the cake right there that kind of convinced him, because I think I think there was a possibility that even though he told Ronnie he would do it, that he would leave. I think there was still a possibility that he was not going to do it, just based off of his past actions.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think Purnell was probably the icing on it when Purnell put it to him straight. And he, as much as he admired Purnell, I think that was the icing right there. Coming from somebody who lived that lifestyle, who got caught up.
Mm-hmm.
He survived, but he got caught up. And he's able to tell you, listen, don't do what I did. Get out.
Yeah. Take it from someone who had the bad outcome.
Right.
I think it was cool that Purnell kind of gave Caine the blessing to, become, I guess, boyfriend, girlfriend, have the relationship with Ronnie. It's like, I know she's fond of you. Like, I'm not around, and just take care of my son. Like, right, like you said,
that was very big of him. I remember.
Yeah, that was big of him.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Menace to Society versus Boys in the Hood. I mean, they get compared and contrasted quite a bit in retrospect. Again, in terms of the timeline, Boys in the Hood came out in 1991, Menace Society in 1993. I'll kick it off since I haven't started one of these discussions. But yeah, in my opinion, I thought that Boys in the Hood was a more well-crafted story with more thoughtful character development. Menace to Society was much more raw, and the narration through Caine I really liked. He was narrating his own story, kind of gave the viewer a first-hand account of his life as a youngster in the hood. Obviously, you have some folks that had the better support system in Boys in the Hood, like Trey Styles. And like I said, the relationship between him, Doughboy, and Kenny was more well developed. Not so much with Caine and O-Dog. You don't really see that relationship.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I would compare it on the surface. Did you want to chime in some more, DynoWright? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there was more character development in Boys of the Hood. They were really like two bookends. Chuck D once said that rap music is the black people's CNN, and this was sort of like MTV. Like, it showed you what life was like in some of these places, and so the comparisons they're very similar in that the depictions of the life were unflinching. Maybe Menace to Society was a little more graphic and violent, but you got the same effect, and you saw kind of the same stuff. I think you're right. I think there was a little more, I guess, exploration of getting out in Boys of the Hood. Maybe it's been a while since we watched it, but it's really just Caine trying to get out. But in Boys of the Hood, I think they were all sort of figuring out what they were trying to do next.
Right. You get to see the trajectory of each of them in Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
And trying to avoid the pitfalls of the gang-fueled neighborhood. And there was that glimmer of hope because there's that possibility of the football scholarship. There's different avenues. There doesn't really seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel for Caine, even though he's offered these ones, but nothing really was like, nothing stuck with him, obviously, as we said.
No, and I think, sorry, to finish that point.
Good.
Yeah, the ways to get out, there were more ways to get out shown in Boys of the Hood, and Menace to Society was like, the only way out is in a pine box.
Unfortunately.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, Boogie, what are your thoughts about comparing Menace to Society with Boys in the Hood as well?
No, I think you both summed it up pretty well. I mean, they both do take place in the same area, South Central Los Angeles. So, and they do both depict the pitfalls of that area in that time period. Like you said, the storytelling is very different. We have first person narration and Menace, and we have the kind of looking from the outside in and Boys in the Hood. But I do like the character development that we did see in Boys in the Hood, and that kind of made you have more of an attachment to those characters.
Yeah.
Because we saw them as kids and we saw the bond that they shared from early on growing up. Even though we didn't see every aspect of them growing up, we saw them as kids. It's kind of like we kind of knew where they were coming from and how they became so tight. And we didn't really see that in Menace, but like we did, like you mentioned, though, there was more than one avenue to get out, and so you were kind of rooting for those characters, all three of them, the main characters. Doughboy, Ricky, and Trey. We were rooting for all three of them to make it because you kind of got a bit of an attachment, and you saw that there was a bond between them, so you didn't want to see any one of them fail. With Menace, I mean, yeah, we were rooting for Caine, but Oda was almost a lost cause.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want him to infect any other area. You want him to stay where you at, or get put down and get locked up or something. Like, what's going on, guy? But no, I think that you will both summed it up pretty well, though. And yeah, they definitely are, like you said, DynoWright. They're bookends, I think, to that area, and definitely, the visual to what's going on at that time period in L.A., South Central L.A.
Yeah, early '90s tensions were high with the Rodney King incident, and so very poignant at the time. Man, I have a mental block where I always call Ricky Kenny. I don't know if you caught that. For some reason, he must have reminded me of... He must remind... I may have done that when we did the other record. I'm like, for some reason, in my head, he's a Kenny. Where the iconic scene is like, Ricky! And I'm like, why do I not remember the name? I don't know why. It's just some odd thing. It's like, Kenny!
Maybe you watch too many South Park.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, they killed Kenny.
Kenny.
Oh my God, bastards! Jeez, but yeah. Oh man, sorry about that. Rest in peace, Ricky.
But the nice tie between the two movies I just found out was that Ice Cube was offered the role of O-Dog, turned it down, and has regretted it ever since. So there you go. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Yeah.
Ice Cube is O-Dog. Goodness gracious.
That would
what a character.
Would make a whole different movie if Ice Cube was O-Dog, because I feel like in Boys of the Hood, Doughboy was really charismatic, and I was really rooting for Doughboy to survive the movie.
Yeah.
And I think if he gave that humanness to O-Dog, I think there'd be a different movie. And maybe the whole opening scene in the convenience store is a lot different, and so a very interesting thought exercise is to redo this movie with Ice Cube as O-Dog.
Yeah, for sure. Another fact, and we mentioned this in the Dear Mama, Tupac legendarily was originally cast to play Sharif, but he was fired, and that led to the physical fist fight or physical fight. It was a one-sided fight probably, or attack on Alan Hughes, and Tupac was charged with assault and battery. That was mentioned by Alan Hughes, who did the documentary series with Afeni Shakur. So Tupac could have played in this movie as well.
Yeah, that would have been crazy to have Tupac and Ice Cube in the movie.
Wow. Yeah. Can you imagine?
Then we have MC8 playing AWAX.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Too Short, Lulo.
Too Short, yeah.
And even Yo-Yo was at the party, the going away party at the end, where Caine got tired of watching the advances of what's his name?
Chauncey.
Chauncey, yes. Got tired of Chauncey's advances on Ronnie and decided to pistol whip him.
Yeah.
Like, that's your boy. How you gonna pistol whip your boy? Like, you could have just pulled him aside and said, "Yo, chill."
Yeah. Caine had no chill by the end of the movie.
But the crazy thing about it is that even if the end didn't play out the way it did, the circle was closing in on both Old Dog and Caine because Chauncey decided to take that infamous tape and send it to the authorities.
Yeah.
It's like he decided that, his retaliation was much smarter. He said, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to shoot him. I'm going to get back at him, but I'm going to do it the smart way.
And I kept looking at Mr. Butler, Sharif's dad, and I'm like, where do I know him from? Where do I know him from? Charles S.
You
Dutton.
know Charles S. Dutton.
Yeah, Rock, the TV show Rock, which was on for several years. Yeah, I'm like, I know that guy. That smile, I know that guy. And I couldn't place it like during the movie itself because I hadn't seen Rock in years, but he's very recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
Charles S. Dutton.
Yeah,
both of these films had some really terrific actors.
Really, yeah.
Just think of Tupac as Sharif in this movie. I mean, we saw how much he chewed up scenes in Juice and Above the Rim and those movies, and you imagine what this movie would be like with Tupac in that role. Which, I mean, Sharif, not a big role, but man, Tupac would probably make it a big role.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so many big names here. Even Glenn Plummer, who played Purnell, he's in another movie, ironically titled South Central.
Yeah.
Good movie. Very good movie. Oh, did y'all see Anthony Johnson?
Wait.
I saw him in the credits, but I couldn't remember his character.
We'll back it up. So in the beginning when they were playing cards at the table, when Tat gets up to shoot the guy with the fedora on, that was Anthony Johnson.
Ah.
And you know what's funny is that all of my times of watching the movie, I didn't pick up on it until that time. I watched it. I'm sitting watching. I'm like, wait a minute. And then I go to the credits like, wait a minute. I thought that was, wait a minute. And I looked at him like, that is him. Because he wasn't being funny. He was kind of in a serious role, even though it was brief cameo. But yeah, that was Anthony Johnson.
Bill Duke is in this.
Bill Duke, phenomenal actor.
Candy Alexander's in this.
Yep. Clifton Powell's
in this. Yep.
Yeah, I was just looking at him. He's been in a lot of stuff. Clifton Powell.
Yeah.
Dead Presidents, Friday After Next.
Mm-hmm.
Rush Hour. He's still doing things this year. Great cast. Yeah. So what about the soundtrack? Had some obviously MC8's on there.
Too short.
Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Brand Nubian, Boogie Down Productions.
I love this soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack. I had the CD.
Okay.
And I listened to it, I mean, almost every day the summer of 94. And I had that CD. I got the rider, and then somebody stole it out of my room. I went to play it one time.
How ironic.
I'm like, where's my CD at?
How ironic.
And that's the case.
That's the case.
Oh, man. That's cold-hearted.
Yeah.
I know we mentioned this one when we were talking about the best soundtracks with DJ Arm and Cap C. I don't know where it ranked, but it was up there.
Yeah, this was one of my picks. The soundtrack was one of my picks.
That was one of your picks, yeah. Go back and listen to that episode if you're into hip-hop music and soundtracks. We list out a whole bunch on that episode. Yeah, I enjoyed the music. No one song really stood out to me like, oh, this track, but I was head bobbing to most of the songs that came on. One other comment I had was like, I think like the action, the conclusion kind of all happened pretty fast. Like the scene where it was like Elena calls Caine and tells him she's pregnant and like he denies it. And then like the scene with Chauncey and then the brutal stomping of Elena's cousin. Like I think they like brought it to a conclusion pretty quickly. And I was like, wow, my head was kind of spinning a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys had the same feeling.
Yeah, it did. The crazy thing about it is that that's just how quickly things can get out of hand.
Unravel.
That
Yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
If everybody moves off of impulses, you go from 0 to 100 real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I feel like Boys in the Hood also, that climax scene sort of took longer to play out. And this one was like, boom,
Yeah.
drive by, it's over.
Yeah. It's like, ooh.
Right. And like those guys weren't even that scene with that whole scene that brought those guys into the fold had happened like much earlier in the movie. Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't even instant. It's like, oh yeah, remember that guy right there? Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
But you hadn't seen them like probably for like a good half an hour or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I really felt bad for Sharif.
Yeah.
Him getting killed in the drive-by was like, oh man.
Yeah.
That was really sad for me.
Yeah, that was extremely sad because he was really trying to get out, and he was friends with them, but you can clearly see that his head was in another place.
Yeah, he was supposed to be doing different things.
And Mr. Butler happened to bury him.
He was mature beyond his years.
Yeah.
And on a higher plane. I still can't get over the fact that the Hughes brothers were 20 years old when they made the film, and the very final scene was powerful. Like as Caine is slowly, dying from his wounds, and like he's recalling his grandfather asking him if he cares whether he lives or dies, because that was one of his quotes. Like, do you care if you live or die? And it's almost like he comes to that realization too late that I kind of do, but it's too late. Like he had no care for that. Like he thought he was invincible, or he just hid his feelings because he had that hard exterior and that hard upbringing where he was desensitized to everything. But deep down, he had a lot to live for. He could have started a new life with Ronnie in Atlanta, help raise Anthony, and reform himself. But he had an opportunity.
On the flip side, though, after I watched that whole end scene, first thing that popped into my head was the "Don't be a menace to South Central while drinking juice" in the hood version of it.
I almost feel like I have to go back and rewatch that one again.
Exactly.
To see how everything is exactly parodied.
You definitely have to. You definitely have to rewatch that movie.
Right.
It'll make it so much funnier because
now you see all the references.
Yeah,
exactly.
all the references. Yeah.
Yeah.
While it's fresh in my head, it makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, there's clear references to Boys in the Hood.
Oh yeah,
throughout the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, like we said, they really did. The Wayans brothers did their homework on that. Like they really analyzed every scene and some of it's word for word or parodied. Each word is parodied, or like each scene to the T. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, they really.
And Lena's cousin is in it. That's the same guy.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Samuel Monroe Jr. Same guy.
That's classic.
Same scenario.
Man.
It's like, wow.
Wow. Boogie, what do you say on Menace Society? Bring that funky flick back?
Bring that funky flick back?
Or leave it in the vault?
For its cultural relevancy, it's very raw, but bring that funky flick back.
Okay, DynoWright?
I think this movie still resonates, so I will bring this funky flick back.
And I am of the same vein. I will bring this funky flick back. Like I said, we talk about, I like Boys in the Hood better overall. Like Boys in the Hood is one that I would rewatch more willingly, multiple times. For me, this one's very brutal and raw, and really well done and super relevant and strong messages. But like, it's one that I wouldn't watch maybe multiple times, or like kind of just leave it on in the background.
It's uncomfortable. Like the first
Yeah, right.
scene
That's
is
probably why it's just
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Really uncomfortable.
I'm more actually I'm more of a comedy guy, or like stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of why. But that was the Hughes brothers' plan. Like, they accomplished what they set out to do. Shock value. 1993. Wow. I mean, 30 years ago, and
Yeah.
they put that out there. So
Yeah.
kudos to them.
Absolutely.
This is one hip hop fans and crime drama fans should see if you haven't already.
Hip Hop Movie Club is produced by your HHMCs, JB, BooGie, and DynoWright. Theme music by BooGie. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Hip Hop Movie Club. On the next episode of the Hip Hop Movie Club podcast, your HHMCs will review Hustle and Flow. Subscribe now in your favorite podcast app and you won't miss it. Shout out to you listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
Remember, don't hate, levitate. Float in the air. Rise above it all.
That's what Caine should have done. He should have levitated.
Caine should have levitated and rose above it.
We got a song Levitate with Da Baby and Dua Lipa. That was big a couple years ago.
Yeah.
My daughter loved that one. She would sing that one a lot.
Catchy.
That's very catchy.